Have you ever experienced rage? Maybe you've probably been in the car with someone who was raging while driving, or maybe you've been in a car with someone and another car has raged at you. We are going to talk today about anger, and this one's tough because for me, anger, that's kind of my go-to. You might not ever see it, you might not ever hear it, but on the inside, there are a lot of things that really make me angry. Especially when I'm tired. You know, when I'm tired, if I can hear you chew your food, or if someone bumps into me, or if someone just talks loud, or maybe asks me to do something, the immediate feeling I get is anger. And it feels like it rushes right through my body. And if I don't shut it down immediately, it just builds and builds on the inside until I lose it. You see, the thing about anger is it doesn't always look the same. Some people just lose it. Some people are like me and it kind of builds on the inside. Or maybe you're really good at giving people the silent treatment. Not only is it a way for you to process your anger by giving them the silent treatment, but it's also a way for you to control the situation. You hold the power because you withhold your words. Now, not all anger is bad. When we see things happening in the world that aren't right, it's a good thing to get angry. But then other times, it's destructive. It moves us towards regret and hurts people. Either way, anger, it's a powerful emotion. So what do we do with it, and how do we keep destructive anger from really taking over and bossing us around? We're going to look at a passage from the book of James in the New Testament. James was the brother of Jesus, but when Jesus was alive and actually walking on earth, James didn't follow Jesus. It was only after Jesus was crucified and came back to life that James was convinced. Eventually, James became a leader in the early church. He lived in Jerusalem, and he wrote his letters primarily to Jewish Christians. James asks us this question in chapter 3, verse 13 of his letter. He says, "Who is wise and understanding among you?" Now you might be asking, how would I even answer that question? What does it mean to be wise? Well, a big part of being wise is taking what you or other people have experienced and learning from it. You understand that life is connected and that actions have consequences. James says, if someone thinks they are wise, let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. James is saying here that wise people are humble people, and that part of staying humble is if you let stuff stay with you that makes you think you're better or more important, then you shouldn't deny it. You should call it out. Don't just pretend to be fine. When pride or arrogance gets lodged inside of us, it comes out out of our actions and it hurts other people. And as long as we think the problem is someone else's behavior, someone else's character, their mistake, we'll never deal with the anger problem inside of us. So if you want to get to the root of your frustration and anger, you need to be willing to admit that the problem is in you. James says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? The problem is when other people are acting like you think they should, or aren't acting like you think they should, or you aren't getting what you want or think you deserve. It's easy to give control to your anger inside you to try and get what you want or to tear other people down. But when you start admitting that the problem is that you're not getting what you want, you get control back. Owning what you can own, and the problem keeps your anger and frustration from really driving you and owning you. So what is your relationship with anger? Do you control it, or does it control you? And the only way to beat the feeling of anger, according to James, is with humility. Even if you aren't the whole problem, humility means recognizing that you are part of the problem. And when you learn how to recognize that, the emotion of anger begins to lessen its control over you. The good news is that for those of us who follow Jesus, We follow someone who led the way in humility. Jesus said no to getting his way. In fact, the Apostle Paul wrote about Jesus this way in Philippians. Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 and 7, he wrote, Jesus, being in very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Jesus had every reason and every right to get his own way, but he didn't. He gave up what he wanted so that we could know how valuable we are in God's sight. Paul starts this passage about Jesus and his humility by saying this in verse 1 and 2. He wrote, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love." Did you catch that? He tells us to be like Christ, to be like Jesus. And then he tells us what Christ is like. Humble when he had every reason not to be. Jesus surrendered his way when he could have easily fought for it. And so following the example of Jesus is how we keep anger from controlling us, because of Jesus, anger doesn't have to be the boss of you. Imagine what life would look like if anger didn't control you. In your own circumstances, what would it look like for you to choose wisdom and humility over anger?